I'm Barbara McCrae.
And I'm Bob Spinozzi, and welcome to Littleton Comment.
You know, this is a busy month, Bob. First, it's daylight savings time, and that ends Sunday, November 4th. So we have to turn our clocks back.
Yeah, and I've never been a big fan of that. I appreciate the extra hour of sleep, but then come Monday, it's dark an hour earlier, and I just, wow, my clock.
Do you leave it alone?
Well, I'll have my clocks changed Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, before, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Veterans Day is November 12th, and Bob will say more about that later in the show. November 22nd is Thanksgiving, and the 23rd, the town offices are open, but the senior diner is closed. So, Bob, I want you to tell Alan to add our anniversary and my birthday to that list.
He will never forget that.
And this is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and my guest today will be Dr. Rachel Movitz. So stay with us for this important issue. There is a lot of fun things to add to your calendars this month. The Littleton Lyceum joined magician and juggler Scott Jameson on Friday, November 9th, for a show people are calling superb, a blast, and heartwarming fun for the whole family. And Scott will have you laughing out loud. But purchase your tickets at the door or online at www.littletonlyceum.org. And all programs are at the Littleton High School Performing Arts Center. Here's a new and special class at the COA, Monet's Water Lily Pastels, and it's a workshop. The cost is $3 per person. The date, Tuesday, November 27th, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. But call the COA office early because this class is limited to 30. We are paying special attention to our veterans this month. And Bob, you're a veteran.
Yeah, all of a sudden, a long time ago. I was in Vietnam 51 years ago.
Oh, no.
And, you know, we talk a lot about the Gulf Wars, and we talk about Vietnam, and we talk about World War II. And we should be talking maybe a little more about World War I. And especially this month, because November 11th has some real significance to it. November 11th is the 100-year anniversary of Armistice Day, which signaled the end of World War I. On the 11th hour, the 11th day, in the 11th month of 1918, fighting came to an end and a treaty was signed between Germany and the Allies in Europe. The Great War, as it's often called, was started on June 28, 1914, with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, and his wife, Sophie. Their deaths sparked a chain of events that led to the outbreak of World War I by early August. It was a war fought by the major military powers in countries that we recognize today that are located in Western Europe and the Middle East. Japan and China were also involved. The United States entered the war in April 1917. But from its beginning in 1914 to its ending 4 years later, World War I became one of the deadliest conflicts in the history of mankind. Germany seems to have been central to the war. They were the first to declare war when they invaded Belgium. They were the first country to use lethal poison gas on the battlefield. They were responsible for using submarines to sink passenger ships, which created international outrage. The most notable sinking was the British ship, the Lusitania, which carried 1,198 people, 128 of them Americans. And on April 2nd, 1917, Congress authorized a declaration of war, and the United States joined France and Britain to fight the Germans. Now, as I mentioned, World War I lasted for over 4 years, and I can't emphasize enough how deadly the war proved to be. Over 16 million people died, and that included an estimated 10 million military personnel. Additionally, there were an estimated 37 million casualties of both military and civilian. Now, in the end, for America, around 4 million soldiers were mobilized and 116,708 American military personnel died during World War I. There were also over 204,000 troops wounded and 757 civilians who died due to military action. Now, you've all seen this poppy worn on Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and the poppy has a special meaning. Once World War I was over, the poppy was one of the only plants to grow on the now barren battlefields. So the poppy became a lasting symbol to the fallen. There was a region in Belgium during the war called Flanders, and a poem was written by Canadian Lieutenant Colonel John McRae, and it was called In Flanders Field. The poem, in song, goes like this.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the lark still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead short days ago. We lived the dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields, in Flanders fields. And now we lie in Flanders fields.
In other news, the Veterans Breakfast is on Wednesday, November 28th from 7:30 to 8:30 at the Senior Diner. This is prepared by the Littleton Police and Fire Departments. Friends of the COA Veterans Lunch is on November 14th. We welcome all branches of the military, men and women of all ages. Join us at noon in the town office's multi-purpose room. Veterans and spouses are free, guests $5 charge. You must call the COA office to reserve a seat, 978-540-2470.
Don't forget the Veterans Ceremony at the Common, November 11th at 11 o'clock. This is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Any information from any family in town who has had a relative in World War I would be welcome there and showing whatever information they have about their family. There are 102 World War I era veterans buried at Westlawn Cemetery here in Littleton. We called John Borowski at jborowski@littletonma.org. The COA is looking for a part-time van driver, and if you are interested, please visit the Human Resources page on www.littletonma.org to see a full job description. The craft group is growing, so sign up now for the November 28th class. This is a popular class, and this month it's holiday centerpieces. There will be an assortment of greens and decorations, and there will be a limit. Don't be left out. The date is November 28th, so call the COA office at the usual number, 978-540-2470. There is a cost of $3. So enjoy the movie Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. And that'll be on November 29th at 1 p.m. This is shown on room 230. In 1979, Donna falls in love with Sam while embarking on a series of adventures throughout Europe. In the present day, Donna's pregnant daughter reunites with her mother's old friends and boyfriends. It's on the Greek island of Kalokeri. I think I got that
I
right.
think you did. I would have said the same things. But you know, this is a remake of the original Mamma Mia
Yeah.
that was made in 2008, I believe.
Yep, yep.
So yeah, it's a I guess what they refer to as a jukebox musical comedy.
Yeah.
But all-star cast. Just quickly, Meryl Streep, Andy Garcia, Pierce Bronson, Colin Firth, Cher, and yeah, many others.
Yeah.
So
We saw it on stage in Boston.
but yeah, that
That
too,
was
of course.
fun because you get into it. You want to help them sing all the songs.
Exactly, yeah.
Because we know them.
Yeah, and it was released this year, I believe, in movie theaters right around the middle of the year. So it isn't that too far off.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Good.
good show.
Okay, well, the Littleton nonprofit organizations are getting their Christmas tables ready for the holiday fair. So don't miss this fun day when you can find arrangements from the Littleton Country Gardeners, hats, scarves, and many knitted items from the Loving Stitches gals, the churches, the schools, the Rotary, and more. But most of all, good old Santa will say hello to all the children, and you older kids too. So put December 1st on your list of things to do, and we will see you there. Take your gifts to the Friends of the Littleton Veterans, who will be hosting a free community gift wrapping event on December 16th from 2 o'clock to 6 p.m. at the VFW Post 6556. And that'll be on 21 Taylor Street. And while you're there, you get to watch the Patriots game, have pizza, and appetizers. And 4:25 is the kickoff. If you need a ride, contact Maureen Woods at woods1234@verizon.net or call 978-501-0123. Our library is a busy place, and let's hear from Sam Alvarez.
Thanks, Barbara. And here's a sampling of what's coming up at the Reuben Hoare Library. At the beginning of November, there will be a teen movie night on November 6th at 1:30 p.m. The film will be Love, Simon. On November 8th at 7, the movie will be RBG, about the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Both movies will take place in the library Cooper Room. On November 10th at 2, there will be a Diwali story time in the children's room. Children are invited to a story time about the Hindu 5-day festival of lights. The Seven Bridge Writing Group is offering a 10-week writing class at the library. This group practices writing and then reads what you write together. Writers of all experience levels, genres, and styles are welcome. Each week, the facilitator will offer a variety of prompts to get your creative juices flowing, and will write alongside the other participants. Please visit the library website to learn how to register. The Friends of the Library are holding a I Read Past My Bedtime event on November 16th. Kids can enjoy a story time. Tell your kids to bring their stuffed animals too. We're inviting their stuffed animals to spend the night at the library. We'll then take their pictures and see what your stuffed animals get up to when the library is closed. On November 14th at 7 in the Cooper Room, Pam Weeks from the New England Quilt Museum will weave politics, women's history, industrial history, and wonderful stories attached to quilts and quilting. Participants who pre-register may bring in one quilt for identification or sharing. There are plenty more events to take part in this month. On November 28th at 7, come meet Eric Manzer, Littleton resident. He's been included in swimming records and an Ironman world record in the physically challenged division. For dates and times for everything I just shared with you, please visit the library website. Thank you, and I'll see you next month.
Thanks, Sam. Springdale Farm is offering our seniors a $25 value for only $15. Jamie will fill a bag of potatoes, fruits, and vegetables. So bring your bag next week, and she fills it up again. One of our seniors has been there twice so far and has gotten, are you ready? Butternut squash, mushrooms, apples, eggs, sweet potatoes, garlic, onions, and peppers. It's a super deal. And Jamie, thank you so much for thinking of us.
Yeah, Bob, this is happens to be the bag that, she will give you to fill.
Yeah.
So this is a super thing. So you better go over there and
Quite
see
big,
what they've
too,
got.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, want another good deal? Try our friend's thrift shop, of course. The shop Donations come in every day, and we would love to sell it all. The money earned from the thrift is used for the senior outreach program, our monthly theme lunches, and other programs. The thrift does need a volunteer to manage the thrift shop soon. I am planning and hoping to retire from this job that I love and would like to find someone, 2, maybe 3 people, to take my place. If you're interested, call 978-540-2470. Leave your name and contact number, and I will call you. And thank you forever. Indian Hill is a favorite place for many of our residents, and let's hear what is happening this month from Evanthea Velakis.
Thanks, Barbara. Well, variety is the name of the game at Indian Hill these days. We've got classical, we've got jazz, we've got pop music, we've got even more than that. And it all starts Friday, November 2nd at 7:30 p.m. We have our Friday night jazz jam, where you get to listen to a swinging set by a professional trio. This time it's the Masako Yotsugi Trio. And after they play, there'll be an open jam session. So if you're a musician and you play a jazz instrument or you sing, you can come on down and join them on stage and sit in, as we call it, with the group. So that's Friday, November 2, 7:30 p.m. over at Indian Hill. Tickets $10 for that. And you can get those at the door, 486-9524 or indianhillmusic.org for more information. The Orchestra of Indian Hill continues its season on Saturday, November 3rd at 7:30 p.m. And this time it's going to be an all-Russian program. Maestro Hangen has invited a young cellist, Nate Taylor, to come and do a cello concerto number 2 by Kabalevsky. And the big piece on the program will be Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony. So that's this Saturday, November 3rd, 7:30 p.m. over at Littleton High School Performing Arts Center. Our youth orchestras will have their concert on Tuesday, November 13th, 7 o'clock p.m. over at Littleton High School. And again, it's 3 of our 3 youth orchestras, and they will perform a variety of selections for you. Our Box Lunch concert series continues on Thursday, November 15th, with 2 shows, one at 11 and one at 1:30 p.m. And this time it'll be a classical program with the Atlas Piano Trio. So again, November 15th, the Box Lunch concert series. Our own Indian Hill Big Band will be on stage on Friday, November 16th, 7:30 p.m. over at Indian Hill. Band leader Jerry Sabatini and the group will be playing the best of American big band jazz with tunes by Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Woody Herman, and lots more. So again, November 16th, you can get tickets for that. indianhillmusic.org for more information. We've got a special concert coming up on Saturday, November 17th at 7:30 p.m. We've got Grammy-winning cellist Mike Block coming on stage, and he's a member of Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble. But he'll be doing classical and pop music and folk music and world music. It's going to be a real multi-genre concert with cellist Mike Block. Again, November 17th, 7:30 p.m. Make sure you get your tickets for that one. And the month finishes off Friday, November 30th at 7:30 p.m. with a jazz concert, and this time we've got jazz violinist Tomoko Omura. She's a gypsy jazz violinist, that's her style, and she'll be playing with the Pamela Hines Trio, and again, Friday, November 30th. Find out more about these and other events, indianhillmusic.org or 486-9524, and we hope to see you at Indian Hill.
Thank you, Eve. Now, the Friends, through Nancy Levine, have a long list of people who have taken an interest in us. Whole Foods will recognize us by catering the December North Pole Luncheon. Il Forno has been catering lunches for us and will cater the Veterans Lunch. O'Neill Theater gives us tickets at each luncheon. I should say Friends Luncheon. We have programs at the schools and with Girl Scouts. The third graders come in to decorate for each holiday, and Panera Bread, with the help of our volunteers, give us bread every Thursday. And bagels, too. The Littleton Country Gardeners have a list of very interesting programs prepared for this year. This month they will be having workshops for the Holiday Bazaar. Some beautiful arrangements come from this club. And the gardeners also have a civics committee who fill the troughs and other areas around town. Interested in the Gardeners programs or joining? Well, then call Sharon Corbin at 978-486-3074.
Want to become friends with your computer? Join Bill Vales in his very informative class every Thursday, 10:30 in room 230, Town Office Building. Now this month, let's run through the different classes that Bill has. November 1st, sharing information on the web, Dropbox, Google Drive. November 8th, social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+. On November 15th, digital photography, part 1, and there are no classes on the 22nd of November. 29th of November, digital photography, part 2. This is a great class, and Bill will stay for questions till noon.
We know that there are many illnesses out there that we hope we won't have to experience, but one that is very scary for us is having Alzheimer's. There is a lot of research on trying to find a cure or slow down the process. We, of course, hope it's soon. This is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and my guest this month is Dr. Rachel Movitz. Welcome. Welcome to be here and help us maybe understand a little more.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Barbara. I'm happy to be here and to talk about this topic that we really need to have people more aware of. It is a problem that is affecting many older adults. In fact, about half of the population over the age of 85 has Alzheimer's disease or some other type of major neurocognitive disorder.
Really?
Yes, and it's a growing issue because we are not familiar enough with the early signs, and many people do not know how to differentiate normal aging from a dementia or major neurocognitive disorder, as we now call it, such as Alzheimer's disease. So early knowledge is very important, and understanding the difference between normal aging and Alzheimer's disease is something that I can help with assisting through this talk and hopefully expanding our knowledge. Normal aging is associated with brain shrinkage. It's beginning in the third decade of life, actually. So our brains are becoming smaller, but with a disease such as Alzheimer's disease, the shrinking of the brain is much more accelerated and much greater than the average population. With normal aging, we do experience some changes in memory. We all may experience some difficulty remembering an event that happened a year ago or so, or a conversation. However, in most cases, we will remember that when we're reminded.
Right.
With a disease such as Alzheimer's, we may not remember a conversation that we had this morning. So it's a very different type of forgetting.
Yeah.
All of us may leave our keys somewhere. I'm definitely guilty of that, not remembering exactly where I put them. The question is, was I paying attention in the first place? Because often that would be an attentional issue, that I'm not paying attention to where I put them.
Oh, I like
Not
that.
a memory issue.
I like that because now I'm going to call it that when I do this instead of Alzheimer's. But I'm always leaving my keys all over the place. And I tell myself it's because I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next.
Yes.
So I
we're
just
not
kind
there
of
in
lay
that
them
moment.
down.
Exactly.
And I walk away.
So what's more concerning is if we find the keys in the refrigerator. And that could be more of a concern that would be associated with a disease such as Alzheimer's disease. So it's very different types of forgetting. Problems with finding words is very common as we age. Occasional word finding problems, but people with Alzheimer's disease struggle with this more often. And they may actually substitute words. So they may say something like a hassock instead of hammock when they're familiar with the word hammock, and this would be unusual. So they're substituting the initial part of the word. Or they might refer to a chair as a table and not realize in the conversation that they've done this. So they're substituting whole words for words that they intend to say. And the person is not aware of it. And this is often what brings people to us, is that they're not necessarily noticing the changes in their cognition, but others are.
Yeah.
And others may be expressing concern for a period of time. But if the individual is not noticing or not aware, then they may not seek help.
Yeah.
So the brain, let's think of it like a file cabinet. As we get older, as I mentioned, the brain does shrink as a natural part of aging. And so we have to organize information differently as we learn it. And we may have a different type of retrieval system. So we have to, because our brain connections have changed to some extent, our retrieval will be different. And we have to accommodate to these changes, and many of us can do that. We may need to state someone's name when we meet them. It's nice to meet you, Susan,
Yeah.
so that we remember it, because we all may forget a name. However, if someone with Alzheimer's disease is forgetting a name, it's often someone they've known for a long time.
Right.
And it may even be a family member or a friend, close friend. So this is a sign that someone could have a disease such as Alzheimer's. And strategies may not help them as much as those which we might use with normal aging related memory changes.
Yeah. I've seen in some cases that the personality changes. Like a person may
Yes.
be calm and gentle and lovely, young, and
Yes.
then if Alzheimer's hits them, they're angry. And I'm not sure if it means they know what's happening, but they're not really nice to people, and you go, where did that come from?
That's an excellent point. And people do often report personality changes in the individuals that have Alzheimer's disease or other types of major neurocognitive disorders. And so there may be a change in personality because someone is more frustrated
Right.
with not being able to do the things that they previously did. Perhaps they're having difficulty with operating a television remote or a microwave, and this is something that could be associated with the development of Alzheimer's disease or other neurocognitive disorders, and it can cause frustration.
Yeah.
Also, the important thing to remember is that Alzheimer's affects the entire brain. The emotional part of our brain does remain intact until the later stages of the disease.
Oh.
So we are always going to be feeling and responding to things in our environment, and our senses are intact and will take in information.
Yep.
However, processing that information may be more difficult, and language, finding words, as I mentioned, may be more difficult. As the disease progresses, people may lose more and more words, and the inability to express oneself or even to understand what is said to them. The loss of attention, being able to attend to a multiple stage instruction. These types of things may cause frustration
Right.
and may cause people to become more angry or irritable.
Well-
or they may appear more apathetic and withdrawn, and people sometimes mistake that for depression.
Right. Well, I just found out recently that my mother's sister has Alzheimer's. My mother, well, I've been told recently that my mother probably didn't have Alzheimer's, but she had a real case of dementia because she started this when she was maybe 92. But my aunt is 86.
Yes.
And one thing about her that I thought very interesting was she was smiling all the time. She was really lovely. And my aunt used to be a little tougher than that. So she just smiles at all of us. I know she didn't know me. And I didn't feel bad because I have dealt with it. So I just thought she was cute because she just smiled. And I said, so Aunt Virginia, do you remember me? And she said, how could I forget you? I know she was saying that like it was to anyone, but I thought it was cute and that she had an answer, you know? But she smiled the whole time she was visiting. It was really nice. But you know, a big problem that I think happens is the family or whoever the caregiver is doesn't understand this personality. And that's very sad because sometimes they get so angry. And you need to just enjoy them and work with it. But don't try, in my book, I say, don't keep trying to say, no, you must remember that.
That's right.
Because that's frustrating for someone.
Yes,
And you
it is.
just go along, so what they didn't remember?
Yes,
They're never going to remember.
absolutely.
So just go along with it and say, you're right. it must have been yesterday that happened, and they calm down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to try to reason with someone who has a progressing major neurocognitive disorder or dementia. And the reality they're experiencing is the reality for them. And trying to reorient them can be very upsetting and frustrating.
Yeah.
So the Alzheimer's Association coined this term therapeutic fiddlets, which you may have heard of. And it's the idea that if it won't harm someone to alter the truth to some extent, or to not exactly tell the specifics of the reality that perhaps is not matching up with theirs, that it's okay to go along with what they're saying. So if they believe that they're in Hawaii having a vacation, so be it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
They're happy.
Exactly. But of course, in the case where they're frightened about something, then let's say they think that someone's stolen their keys, then in that case, it may be helpful to provide some comfort and reassurance and say, let's go look for them together. And then you, at that time, can help them to see that reality they thought has occurred is not matching up, and someone hasn't stolen their keys. So it's really just trying to judge the situation. And I think part of it is that for families, friends, it can be very painful. The disease gradually results in the loss of the person that you knew, and there's grieving that goes with that.
Well, it's
and
painful.
There's frustration, painful, grief, exactly.
Yeah.
And that can cause people to have difficulty knowing, is this something I need to fix, or is it something where I should go with the situation?
Yes, and the family, or again, a caregiver, gets frustrated especially a family, if you don't remember.
That's right. That's right.
So you really just have to understand that's going to happen.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean, maybe inside someplace, they still love you.
That's right. And that's the emotional part of the brain. So they may not remember who you are, but they'll remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And so sometimes a family member will tell me, I walked into the room and he couldn't say who I was, but I saw him light up. And that's the important part to hold on to.
Absolutely.
That relationship, the fact that you are still affecting your loved one, or someone that you know who you care about with the disease into the late stages. Even if they aren't quite sure who you are or what your name is, you are still affecting
Still
them.
them.
Yes.
So that's what Mom used to do when she was in the nursing home. She would, when I'd walk in and come down the hall, she would be sitting there saying, "That's mine." So I was that and I was hers, and she remembered that. And I always thought that was so cute.
Yes, yes.
But yes, it just happens.
Yeah, it is such a difficult disease. And as you mentioned, we've been searching for decades for cures or disease-modifying treatments, and unfortunately, we're still not there. The reality is that the disease is caused by nerve cell death that begins. People can be asymptomatic for years, 15 to 20 years before they show the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, wow.
So, and it's due to the buildup of amyloid beta protein that is not being cleared away in the manner that it is supposed to be cleared away. So these aggregates or buildups of these proteins occur, and then these tangles may join in, called tau, and causes nerve cell death. And that interferes with the place where learning and memory and language occur, the synapse, which is between the nerve cells. So the reality is, unfortunately, these amyloid beta plaques and tangles may be there years before we have the symptoms. So the research is showing us that we need to try to figure out how to treat people before they have the symptoms.
Right.
And the good news is that there's things that we can do that are neuroprotective or preventative. So we may have the gene, the APOE4 gene. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will develop Alzheimer's disease, but there may be a higher risk. There are many people who have the gene and don't develop the disease. So some of the neuroprotective factors that may influence whether the disease does develop could be sleep. If we're not getting enough sleep, there's a direct link, yes, between the development of amyloid beta plaques and the development of Alzheimer's disease. So we want to start with good sleep hygiene. And the other thing that's very important is to think about our cardiovascular health. The brains of about 80% of older adults who develop Alzheimer's disease, on autopsy, it was found that those people also had cardiovascular health issues.
Really?
So hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, those types of risk factors can contribute. So if we're able to modify those risks earlier in life, we may ultimately prevent this disease. The other risk factor is brain stimulation. The neuroprotective effects of learning new things, challenging ourselves, engaging in studying a new language are going to be protective. We want to keep the nerve cells active. And even if some of the synapses disappear due to the buildup of the plaques and tangles, we can help to create that cognitive reserve, which is neuroprotective, by continuing to push ourselves to learn and to stay social. It's those who withdraw and who do not engage in intellectual stimulation that are at more risk, and the disease may progress more quickly.
But, I mean, look who had Alzheimer's. And this has been a president. You can't tell
That's
me
right.
that he's not doing a lot of reading and
Right.
active
Yes.
things for his brain. So there's where I get confused when they say, you know, do puzzles, read books, join something.
Yes.
And yet these guys have been ruling the world and they still get Alzheimer's.
That's an excellent point. Unfortunately, the genetics can be a big risk factor that we can't bypass. But as I mentioned, there are some people who have the APOE4 gene who don't develop the disease. The other risk factors we do need to keep in mind, as I mentioned, are the cardiovascular risks. So if someone does have those, it could be that they are at increased risk of Alzheimer's disease, even if they are intellectually stimulated quite frequently. And the important thing, too, that I didn't say, which I think is important to mention, is we don't want to be doing crossword puzzles because that's forcing us to retrieve information we already know.
Oh.
What's more important is that we try to engage our minds in new things. And in that way, we're firing those nerve cells that are still intact, and we're keeping those connections strong. So learning a new language is an example of that. And reading is a good example of that. Listening to audio tapes of educational programs. And some of these cases of people who are very highly educated, who do engage in intellectually stimulating activities, they do unfortunately develop the disease, but the progression may be slower because of that cognitive reserve. So we want to keep that in mind, that it may not be a complete way of preventing the disease, but we may have there may be a better outcome, or it may the symptoms may show up later later in life, where they may show up sooner, or the progression may be more accelerated if there isn't this type of intellectual stimulation. The other thing, too, is the importance of I mentioned cardiovascular risk management. So exercise, our diet. A lot of people are familiar with the Mediterranean diet, so a heart-healthy diet, rich in green leafy vegetables and dark berries, a lot of the things I love, fortunately. Low in foods that are saturated in fat, high in omega-3 fatty acids, so fish, salmon in particular, mackerel, the cold water dwelling fish, or taking omega-3 fatty acid supplements, folic acid, flaxseed, things like that
Wow.
are very helpful.
Well, right now, though, I'm getting a little nervous because I told you my aunt has Alzheimer's. My mother was close to it. Should I be worried? Like I said, it's one of those scary things.
It is scary.
Yeah.
And the reality is that many older adults are at risk of developing the disease. As I mentioned, about 50% of the population over 85 will develop the disease. But the good news is not everyone does, and not everyone with the genetics develops Alzheimer's. And I think that the fact that we know now that there are things we can do earlier in our lives, if we know we're at increased risk, can help us to feel that there is something we can do to affect change and possibly prevent the disease, or, as I said, maybe slow down the acceleration of the disease if it is beginning. And the signs would be there probably when we get into the 4th decade of life in terms of our brain anatomy, that the plaques and tangles may show up that early in life, again, long before the symptoms. But if we're doing things that mediate the risk or reduce the risk of these symptoms being accelerated, then that can be very good for our prognostic outlook. The other thing, too, is that there are studies that show that people who engage in mindfulness meditation exercises for only 8 minutes a day have bigger hippocampal structures. And the hippocampus is the memory center of the brain. So relaxation techniques, stress management can be very important. And there's newer research that I just saw the other day that higher levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, we pump that out when we're pumping adrenaline, when we're in fight or flight because we're under stress. It was designed for us to protect ourselves at a time of risk. It went back long ago, but now a lot of us pump out that adrenaline and the cortisol, that stress hormone, on a regular basis because we are under too much stress in our daily lives, and that can increase the risk for the development of Alzheimer's disease and other major neurocognitive disorders. So simple stress management, including meditation, mindfulness, yoga, these types of stress management techniques have been found to make a difference too. So the good news is that there are things we can do when we're
slow it down.
Yes, to slow
anyway.
it down. It may be there. It may be starting.
Yeah.
In any of us, even in just the 4th or 5th decade of life, but there are things we can do again to affect the prognosis and the speed at which the symptoms progress,
I see.
or even how intense they are when they do begin. There are some people who have a milder level of symptoms for a longer period of time because they are engaging in these strategies that help to keep the functioning higher, the cognitive reserve.
Yeah.
So
The
we call
first
it.
thing is we want to be able to live a little longer. Then we have to make sure that
we live
we
well.
know we're living
That's
a little
right.
longer.
Yes,
But
yes.
yeah, well, this is a good thing to know, though. There are people out there that might be a little frightened, and they might try these things that you're talking about. One of the things I did read about recently was the reminiscent program they're doing in San Diego. And it's having a place that is from their period, you know, 1950s, whatever, and they're making the space look like that.
Yes.
They've done everything to make it look like that, and people are enjoying it because they feel that they're okay and they're there.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that speaks to, in particular with Alzheimer's disease, people often remember the past as though it happened yesterday, but they can't remember yesterday. And so the most important thing is to meet them where they are and to help them to preserve that sense of dignity and joy.
Yeah.
And if they had that joy associated with that period of their life, then to recreate it can be very powerful and meaningful for them.
Yeah.
Reminiscence is extremely important for individuals who have Alzheimer's disease. And it can really help with the mood and the personality changes that you were pointing out.
Right.
It helps with that sense of empowerment over their day-to-day function.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bring up those losses that they are experiencing or others are noticing. It's keeping them where their strengths are.
Yeah, that is really good, I think.
Absolutely.
We have our diner down in the Council on Aging
Yes.
as the 1950s.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what's important is it promotes socialization. Going to a diner, going to memory cafes are very important because when we stay isolated, this can accelerate the disease progression as well. And so that's why there are a lot of programs that are geared towards engaging people in activities, and the memory cafes and restaurants that understand that there are some individuals who need people to present two options instead of a long menu.
Right.
The purple table restaurants, which are some people are hearing about.
Yeah.
Where they
we have some here. in Acton.
Yep, we do. It's wonderful
Yep.
because we're understanding that there are needs that can be met by simple environmental input or changes.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like we're trying. We are trying to help
Trying,
and make
yep.
them comfortable.
That's
and why
right.
not? I mean, it's not a disease where they are going to do something terrible.
Right.
But it's being done to them.
Yes.
So it means give them a little space.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's, I think, the stigma of this word that people are, as you said, it's scary.
Yeah,
But
that's the big one.
understanding that it is a disease that affects memory and cognition and language, but it doesn't make someone, as you said, a bad person or make them do bad things.
No,
It's not something that should be treated that way, and we need to treat it in individuals who have this disease and other neurocognitive disorders with compassion and treat them with dignity.
Yeah, it isn't hard.
It isn't hard.
See, that's what they have to understand.
That's right.
It isn't hard. You have to give up a little bit, and you have to kind of join them.
That's right. Join them.
Yeah, for
That's
the
right.
time that you're with them.
Right.
I really enjoyed my mother. I did, and she was quite amusing at times, and she didn't ask for a lot, except for one thing, which was really funny because it was really close to when she passed away. She looked in the mirror, and she saw gray hair, and she said, "I've never had gray hair," and she never did because she dyed it all the time. And so my husband and I rushed her to the little beauty place they had in the home, and we dyed her hair. And she was so happy that she was herself again. You know, she had
Isn't that wonderful?
to have her dark hair.
That's right.
We laughed, but I said to my husband, I'm not letting her pass away with gray hair because she'll be back talking to me for sure.
That was important to her,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you met her where she was.
It was easy.
And what was important.
It was easy.
And
It
that's
is
wonderful.
easier. It can be easier than you think. You never should
Absolutely.
get angry with them. They didn't do this.
That's right. That's right. And I think that people do struggle with that whole reasoning piece of it, that someone isn't trying to be difficult if they have this disease, and they're not. In many ways, they're not able to reason through something that you might be trying to tell them that isn't quite accurate in terms of how they're perceiving things. So trying to redirect, if someone may forget, if they're stuck on something that's upsetting to them, trying to redirect the conversation to something else may be a way to help them rather than getting into an argument.
Yeah. So how about a job? What can they do that would make them feel comfortable? Could you give them something to do?
Absolutely. And I think that's the important thing, is that we want to go to reaching the long-term memory, the skills that they have had. So there are some individuals with Alzheimer's disease who still play the piano into the later stages, as they always have, and so allowing them to utilize a talent that they still may have.
Yeah.
Dancing is something that people may have been excellent dancers, putting on the music that they love, allowing them to dance. And sometimes if there's agitation that's developing or some restlessness, giving them a repetitive task that allows them to feel that they're doing something that's productive, such as folding items,
Dishes?
stacking dishes, crochet, if they like to do crochet, knitting, those types of things can be very helpful because it gives someone a sense of purpose and meaning,
Yeah.
and it's re-engaging them. I think the problem is that so often if someone loses their language, there's this tendency for people not to talk with the person.
Oh.
So it's important to go to where they are.
You're right.
And to perhaps talk with them about things that they do remember, going back to the past, and
Right.
remember there's this memory I have of when we did this together in 1953, and it makes me so happy to think about it, and often that is something that will stay with them because the longer term memory is preserved into the later stages.
Yeah.
So, and then not having to require conversation back and forth as much,
Yeah.
giving them tasks to
Yeah.
do,
We have
or
a-
dancing.
we
That's
know
a way
some-
of communication and closeness that
Yeah.
we don't do enough of, I think.
I think too. We know someone. We know someone that. We try to mention the old days and everything else. Well,
And are they receptive to that? Does
Yes.
that seem to work well?
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
So-
but if we're talking about something that happened last week,
No.
that's not going to
No,
be
no.
helpful, or even last year.
But anyway, I really feel that this was very interesting. I'm going to watch what I do, though, and what everybody does around me. But, you know, we kind of joke about it, and we say, if we forget something, I always say something like, well, put me in the home. You know what I mean? But I don't mean it. I just say it. Yeah. So, but I really enjoyed this visit we've had, and maybe you can come back another time and we'll have another discussion about Alzheimer's or whatever you want us to. So thank you so, so much for coming today.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I do think it's so important that we get the knowledge out there about these things, and I appreciate you inviting me to do that.
Well,
thank you.
I enjoyed it.
I did as well.
Okay.
Barbara, a really informative interview. You know, it's a very important issue, growing problem.
A scary problem.
Yeah.
Very scary. But we did find out a lot of good things.
Yeah, you really did.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, both of you, of course. Now, fix your clocks, November 4th. Join the veterans on the Common November 11th, and have a special Thanksgiving Day.
But meantime, don't forget to hug a senior.